Hi, welcome to part 2 of this series summarizing the ungodly long epic that is the Mahabharata. Last episode, we covered the marriages of King Shantanu, the birth of Prince Bhishma, and how he earned his name by giving up his birthright to the throne of Hastinapur. This episode, let's explore more of the family tree and their struggle to produce a new heir to the kingdom. Get ready for part 2 of this long story short. After Bhishma promised to give up the throne, remain celibate, and serve the future king, Satyavati finally agreed to marry King Shantanu. Shantanu, upon finding out what his son did for him, gave Bhishma a blessing to be able to choose when and where he died. Apparently back in those days, if somebody gave you a blessing, it was guaranteed to come true, and in the case of Bhishma, it absolutely did give him immortality as long as he wanted. Think of it like Lily Potter's blessing to Harry Potter, except way better and more useful. A few years passed, and Satyavati gave birth to 2 sons. The older was named Chitrangada, and the younger was named Vichtravirya. Shantanu passed away after a few years, and left the kingdom in the hands of Chitrangada. The crown prince was a great warrior, but also arrogant, and never listened to his brother Bhishma's advice. He conquered many enemies and demons using his fighting tactics and prowess. But one day, he thought he was good enough to fight with the Gandharvas, celestial beings known for their prowess in the musical and fighting arts. He was immediately curb-stomped and killed, leaving his younger brother Vichitravirya as the new king. The new crown prince was still a kid, and not nearly as arrogant as his older brother, so he listened to Bhishma and respected his guidance. When he was finally of age, Vichitravirya got ready to ascend the throne, and Bhishma went to go find his baby brother a queen. Luckily, in the next kingdom over, King Kasha had 3 daughters who were getting ready to pick their own suitors from a lineup of all the eligible princes in the land. As soon as Bhishma heard about this, he crashed the ceremony and declared that Vichitravirya was more eligible than any of the princes and kings there. So he came as a proxy to claim all 3 of these women for his brother. Did he have to take all 3 of them? Nope. Would one wife have been enough? Yep. Would this bite him in the butt? It goddamn better. Obviously, the other kings and princes got mad and got ready to throw down against Bhishma to defend their chance of getting married. But it didn't matter. Bhishma defeated all the kings single-handedly, and at the same time too. Even King Shalva, who was capable of defeating powerful demons, couldn't match up to Bhishma. After wiping the floor with all the kings, Bhishma headed back and began making arrangements for Vichitravirya's wedding with all 3 of the princesses. On the day of the wedding, the oldest princess, Amba, confessed she actually loved Shalva, and he loved her too, and on the day of the courting ceremony she was planning on picking him as her husband. Not wanting to stay in the way of true love, Bhishma let her go to King Shalva and get married. But when Amba showed up at Shalva's palace, he rejected her, saying that since Bhishma defeated him in battle, he was not worthy of marrying her anymore. Dejected, she went back to Bhishma, saying that since he did win her in battle on the day she was supposed to pick a suitor, he should marry her. Unfortunately, Bhishma rejected her too, due to his vow to remain celibate and loyal to the throne. He tried to convince Vichitravirya to marry her like originally planned, but he rejected her because he didn't want to marry someone who was in love with someone else. With nowhere to go and no one to marry her, she cursed Bhishma for causing her situation and promised she would get him killed. She went to each of the kings and princes who attended her ceremony, promising to marry anyone who would fight and kill Bhishma on her behalf. Knowing how great a warrior he was, though, no one accepted her offer. Realizing that no one was man enough to do it, she decided to do it herself. She went to the forest to do penance to Lord Shiva in hopes of getting a blessing from him. Pleased with her devotion, Shiva appeared in front of her and promised to grant any wish she had. She wished to be born as a man in her next life and destroy Bhishma, thus proving the old adage that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. Her wish was granted and she died shortly afterwards. Meanwhile, Vichitravirya was happily married to Amba's 2 sisters, Ambika and Ambalika. But after 7 years of marriage, Vichitravirya became ill and died. Now, depending on the translation, it was either tuberculosis, heart failure, or some other unnamed illness. My favorite version, though, is the one that states he loved his wives so much and kept them so close to his heart, he died of a heart attack. This version doesn't send out a great message about women, but I love the irony of that situation. Unfortunately, even though he had 2 wives, Vichitravirya still died childless, and since Bhishma didn't have kids nor wanted the throne, Hastinapur's throne was left without an heir. To fix this, Satyavati called her other son, Vyasa, whom you might remember from the last video. She asked Vyasa to give Ambika and Ambalika a suitable heir to the throne. Vyasa first had a child with Ambika, but apparently he was so terrible to look at, Ambika kept her eyes closed during the entire child-making process. Because of that, her son Dhritarashtra was born blind. Vyasa then had a child with Ambalika. She knew to keep her eyes open, but she went pale during the process, so her son Pandu was born a very pale and sickly color. Satyavati insisted that her daughter-in-laws try one last time to have a baby of Vyasa, but neither wanted to be with him again, so they sent their handmaiden to do it instead. This woman was decent and respectful the entire time, which is why her child, Vidura, was born perfect. Unfortunately, since neither Vyasa or the handmaiden were of royal blood, Vidura wasn't eligible for the throne. So, the kingdom was left to choose between Dhritarashtra and Pandu, and that decision essentially caused all of the problems for the rest of the story. So, this part was very dense, with the birth and death of Bhishma's brothers, the tragedy of Amba, and the birth of his nephews. But from here on out, you're about to witness the beginnings of all of our main characters, and what led to all the infighting and eventual deaths this epic became known for. See you on the next Long Story Short.